There you go. If somehow you do not want to be recorded, now is your time that you can just peace out. But as I was saying, one of the things that I would really like in this webinar is for there to be a lot of participation, meaning feel free to try things out a bit, and obviously know your limits. My goal is not going to be to push you until you sweat or anything like that. But we're going to focus on 4 moves in particular, and they're going to be 4 of the moves, 4 of the categories of movement, we'll say, that are going to appear in the upcoming Bodyweight Badass course that I'm going to be releasing in time for Valentine's Day, mid-February. So one of the things that we're going to be focusing on in particular is some of the things that I have noticed over my 11 years of teaching that has proven to be a bit of an issue for people when it comes to calisthenics training. And one of the problems is that, and there are a number of them. And what I want to do actually is I want to get you to understand it on a level that basically everybody can kind of relate to. And that level in particular would be kettlebell training, because everybody understands the importance of technique with kettlebell training. It's been drilled into people's heads. So I want to just share, I'm going to do a quick screen share here. If I can find the proper, here we go. 1 second. What we're going to do is we're going to just take a look at some flaws in people's technique. In this case, mine. I didn't want to make anybody else, feel bad, so I wasn't going to put anybody on blast, as the young kids say. So the question: would you swing like this? Right? You got first picture over on the left, using my arms too much, and I'm kind of lifting with the arms. Right? Picture right in the middle. I'm not using my midsection, kind of leaning back. And on the far right, we can see is I'm not really finishing with my hips. Now, anybody who has even like a perfunctory knowledge of the kettlebell swing knows, okay, you know what? If you do this with a 12 kilo bell or a 16 kilo bell, it's going to be way worse if you try to pick up a 24 or a 32 or 48. So people understand that if they want to, at least people in the strong first and the hard style kettlebell world, generally speaking, they understand that the technique has to be good when the weight is light, so that when things start to get heavier, it translates well to that. And you see that weight or difficulty, intensity, as we might call it, is like a magnifying glass for our technique. If the technique is on point, then when it's really heavy, then you can be sure that it's going to be pretty good when it's light. And likewise, same thing goes with grinds. Would you press like this? Hopefully you wouldn't make any of these faces. This was, purely for demonstrative purposes, obviously. But the one on the far left, you can see if you look very closely, I'm elevating my pressing shoulder because, I'm too weak to press it up. Or I'm not paying attention. In the middle, leaning back too far. And then on the right, pressing too far out to the side. So again, this is another example. If you see all of these things, you're going to see, okay, well, maybe you can get away with that with an 8 kilo or a 12 kilo or a 16 kilo. But the minute it gets to 20 or 24 or 32, you're going to just end up getting torpedoed, right? So now the question is, and I did find this picture. I didn't have any picture of me doing it poorly. So apologies to the lady in this picture, all right? Why would anybody then do push-ups like this? Now, this has a whole list of reasons of why this particular approach to doing push-ups, which many people do, has a number of issues with it. Right now, these are what's listed here are the technical problems with this, and you can get away with doing stuff like this for a long time. The issue is that we do not want to just do push-ups. Generally speaking, most of us want to maybe do more push-ups, or we want to build up the strength in our arm and chest and our arms and chest so that we can press heavier. Or the more ambitious among us would like to work toward bodyweight dips or one-arm push-ups. So if you wouldn't swing a kettlebell like this, and you wouldn't press a kettlebell like that with a lightweight, then when it comes to foundational calisthenic stuff, the question has to be, why would you do them like this? And there are really a couple of reasons. And number one, people put a little to no focus on the technique with the calisthenics movements because they think, okay, well, these are technically easier moves, so why bother with it? So what they do is they'll kind of make the shape of the movement. And this is kind of what this gal is doing here. Like we can tell she's attempting to do a push-up because we know the general shape of it, right? But obviously you've got lumbar curve, abs are sagging a little bit. limited range of motion, which may not be the worst thing in the world given the other problems going on here. No scapular retraction and head jutting down and stuff like that. So what it really comes down to is a lot of people kind of treat them like they're the vegetables that they kind of hold their nose and then, you know, eat really quickly. And then they don't treat them like a main course that they would savor. And you've heard this plenty of times. People will say, oh, what if you can't get to the gym? I'm snowed in. My gym is closed, you know, due to COVID regulations or any of the other, you know, issues that we've dealt with over the last 2 years. And so the response is, oh, it would just do push-ups or just do squats. And so it's like, the question has to be, why weren't those things on the menu to begin with? Because you didn't really esteem them. You kind of thought they were like, you know, these are vegetables. My mom's not here forcing me to eat them. So why bother with it? So the problem is ultimately that people look at these movements as being like, I have a friend when I did Krav Maga many years ago. I saw him post this on Facebook maybe 8 or 9 years ago, and it blew my mind. He said, I had no idea there was a technique to pull-ups. He's like, I don't know what he was doing on the bar. I never saw him do them, but it was just evidently got on the bar and just generally pulled himself upward. But if his goal were to do, let's say, weighted pull-ups or one-arm pull-ups, if your foundation doesn't look good, you're not going to be able to stack all that much on top of it. So the whole point here that we're going to begin with very soon is going to be that we want to focus on the most important element of anything as far as technique goes. And it's not just how it looks like, but how you move. So you might think, okay, military press, you know, don't go out too far, but can you put your hand over your head? Can you do it without elevating your shoulder or leaning back? So every exercise that we do has an element of movement that has to be in place. And it goes beyond just mobility, but also because we're talking about compound movements here, meaning movements that cross multiple joints and multiple muscle groups. So the question is how well do these different joints and muscle groups work together? And if anybody here is a trainer or has tried to help family members or loved ones to get stronger in the past, you've probably noticed that a lot of people have some difficulties with some really basic things. And what we're going to do here is we're going to try to take a brief look at how we can address some of the more common things. And by doing so, whether you're a raw beginner or intermediate or even advanced, I really think that some of the stuff that we're working on here will be very helpful for you. And as a matter of fact, Joel, who is joining us from Australia, he did some of these things just I guess about a week and a half ago, because he and I did a one-on-one session online, and we covered some of these things. And so he's going to be very familiar with us, and maybe we'll get his insights in just a little bit. But what I want to do first is I want to take a look at the basics of push-ups in particular. And so what I've got here, and I'm going to be sharing the screen momentarily and just walking you through some of the basics, is the basics of how to do a push-up properly and in very short order. So what we're going to do, number one, for the push-up, we meaning you, by the way, because I would love it if you would participate. You will get a video of this later on. So if you want to practice later rather than now, that's perfectly fine. But I'm going to give you some time to practice. And the important thing here is that when we're looking at push-ups, there are a wide variety of them. We're only going to focus on standard push-ups, which is going to be hands slightly outside of shoulder width. And I'm going to show you how I like to find the hand width. We're going to start with that. And then what we're going to do is two things. We're going to do a variation on a scapular push-up to help us understand what the scapulae are supposed to be doing while we're doing a push-up and why. And then rocking so that we can kind of dynamically get them to move the way that they're supposed to, and you can feel how they're supposed to move, so that when you translate it into a push-up, your push-up should feel stronger if you've done it correctly. All right. So I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to take a quick look, and we'll go from here. So what I'm doing right now is flex the lats, pull the hands back, and that's about where I want my hand position to be. So for those of you who are going to be participating, what I'd like you to do is do the same thing, right? Flex your lats a little bit. Just imagine you're on the beach, and you're gonna show off a little bit. There's a pretty lady walking by. Ladies don't normally flex their lats when a handsome gentleman goes by, so I'm not using that example for the gals. So just think kind of like flex the back muscles a little bit, and then you're gonna open the chest and pull the hands back as you see here. All right. And once you get that feeling, what I want you to do is put your hands on the ground in roughly that position, right? You can fiddle with it a little bit. This is not something that's like, this is not nuclear physics. So if you're a little bit off, it's perfectly fine. you can take your time and kind of get a general idea of how it should be feeling, right? And this is, again, for how to find the position for standard push-ups. If we're doing narrow grip or wider grip, it's going to look a little different, right? So now what you're going to do, you put your hands on the ground, and as I'm doing it here, I'm getting on my knees, go back like this, put my feet back, and then I do a couple of push-ups. So what we're going to do is we're going to do these push-ups. I'm going to show you from the side as well, so you can take a look. I want you to notice that I am keeping my body planked, right? I'm not, I think I demonstrate this poorly in a second. Yeah, I'm not doing any of this stuff. No, none of that. All right. So what I want you to do is just do a couple like that, kind of get a general feel for how your push-ups feel right now. What we're going to do next is we're going to, after we do this, we're going to introduce some of the movements that we're going to go through to help make sure that we're recruiting as much muscle as possible to make our push-ups easier. When you can make a few technique tweaks and make your push-ups stronger, or your rows, or any of these other things, it goes a long way when you start adding up the reps, because you're less likely to tweak things, you're less likely to feel like crap. So just get into position, give yourself a couple of push-ups, and then internalize how it felt. Like, did it feel easy? Did it feel like you had kind of a tweak somewhere? Did it feel like one muscle group is tiring out early? Things like that. So once you've done a few like this, we'll go ahead and return to the center. So give a couple, internalize how it feels. Okay, and now what we're going to do is, and by the way, if you need to, you can also do it with your hands on an elevation, depending on your strength level. There's no problem with that at all, because it's going to work all the same. All right, so then what we'll do next, oh yeah, none of this either. That will not fly. All right, so what we're going to do is, now you're going to see my shoulder blades. This is what we want to see while we're doing it, is the shoulder blades move back while the elbows move back. And I'm a little bit over exaggerating. What we don't want to see is that they move up. That's not good. What you want is they just move back lightly. I'm not trying to force them back. This is very important. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do a very regressed version of scapular push-up. Now watch very closely. I just kind of let my shoulder blades go back a little bit, but I'm not letting them go up. So you'll see that in a second. It's just back. So none of this. I'm not trying to get my shoulder blades back as far as I can. I'm not trying to elevate them, anything like this. Okay, it's a very mild feeling. So it almost feels like if you're trying to stretch the logo on the front of your shirt, you'll get the right idea. And if you're doing it properly, what you're going to feel is that those shoulder blade, the muscles around your shoulder blade are going to feel like they're contracting, maybe a little bit more than what you're used to. So what I want you to do is you're going to keep your arms straight. You're going to sit all the way back. So you're going to sit on your butt. You're going to have your hands all the way forward, or almost all the way forward. You don't want to have to reach, but you want to feel kind of wedged in place. And then you're just going to, just gently open up the, or stretch the logo on the front of your shirt. It's going to be a very mild movement. We're not talking a huge range of motion, just enough where you should start to feel a contraction in your upper back. And keep your eyes forward too, I would say, because I want to prevent you as much as possible from letting your head dip down. That's a very common thing that people will do. The head will move down slightly as a result of the movement of the shoulder blades. We don't want it to dip down excessively. I'm going to take a look through here. Michael, looking good. Let's see here, Lior. Oh, we got another Israeli. Excellent. Joel, looking good. Francois, Matthias, excellent. All right, now if you've done this a couple times, what we're going to do next is we're going to work on rocking. So now what I want you to do, a lot of times when people rock, they just think, I'm going back between my hands and my feet. And it's true, but what I want you to do is I want you to now feel the sensation of your shoulder blades moving all around your rib cage as you're doing it. And if you've done this properly, you should kind of feel almost like, wow, I'm feeling them a lot more than I'm used to. So this is exactly what you want. You're going to rock forward, keep your eyes forward, and let your shoulder blades just move naturally. All right. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at your form. Keep it nice and relaxed. And keep your elbows straight as you're doing this. Your elbows will obviously bend when we're doing the push-ups, but when we're doing this stuff, what we want to do is kind of, in a way, isolate the movement so that we can get the right idea for how it should feel. Joel, looking good. Matt, Very good. Lior, excellent. Mike, very nice. Francois, excellent. All right, Elizabeth, I can't see you, but I trust that it is top shape. Now I can see the top of your head. Okay, good. All right, now what we're gonna do, shake it out a little bit, kind of, get your hands off the ground, relax a little. What we're gonna do is just gonna go back and we're gonna do some more push-ups. And what I want you to do is I want you to replicate the same feeling in your shoulder blades that you've just gotten with these two drills. And I want you to see if the push-ups feel smoother, if they feel easier, if they feel stronger, if you feel like you're recruiting more muscle. So let's just do a couple of push-ups and then we'll reconvene and we'll see how they feel. So go ahead, give me like 3 to 5 push-ups. All right, looking pretty strong. Excellent. So feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to just give me a sense of how it felt like, if there was any difference in particular that you noticed. I'm going to go through the participants list. And if nobody raises their hand, we're going to do what's called Russian volunteering, which is where I just call on somebody and you are put on the spot. So feel free to jump in. Let's see here. Matthias, I'm gonna unmute you. Go ahead. Tell me how it felt. Did you notice a difference? Did you feel any change at all? How did it feel?
Yeah, I'm not even warmed up or something. I almost missed the meeting, so I did nothing before, and it felt very explosive, to say it this way. So it was very easy to shoot up without even focusing on trying to get up very fast. So
awesome. Excellent. So they felt faster, they felt smoother.
Yeah, faster, absolutely. Yeah, faster is a good way of describing it. I felt very explosive without trying to be explosive.
Fantastic. Excellent. Excellent. Well, Joel's already done this, so I'm just going to ask Joel to unmute. So, because I know he won't be bashful. I don't think he will be. All right.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yeah. So I noticed in the first run, I did a bit of a heavy hike yesterday with a heavy pack.
Mm-hmm.
So through, I guess, my left C-spine and into the acromioclavicular joint of my left shoulder, has been feeling a bit tight, and it felt tight on the first round. After the rocking and the scat push-ups, it's freed right up. So it feels very solid.
Nice.
Very smooth.
Very cool. Very cool. Joel, by the way, is going to be doing what is a level 9 training for Wing Chun Kung Fu later this year, correct? Or in April, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, 9 in April and 10 in December, hopefully.
Yeah. So for somebody like this, who's going to be doing a lot of like very, very heavy stuff on the body, it's very good to make sure that you've got your body in good working order. So stuff like this is going to come in very handy for him. So Joel, thank you very much for hopping in. Does anybody have any questions before we move on to the next round? I'm going to just take a real quick look through here. Feel free to raise your hand. And if you do have a question, just make it very quick, obviously, because we want to make sure that we're staying on schedule. All right. Looks like no questions at the moment. Russian volunteering went off without a hitch. All right. So the next thing that we're going to be doing, this is just me demonstrating. Next, we're going to be working on the squat. I'm going to get to the correct spot here. All right. So this is a very common issue that you see with a bodyweight squat. I want to make sure that I mention this very quickly. Technically speaking, there is a squat variation where you will allow your knees to cave in. It's not something you'd want to do for a lot of reps, but it's kind of like a bulletproofing exercise. So just know that there's a time and a place for everything, including doing squats like this. But for now, what we want to try to do is, again, we want to set ourselves up to have a good base of bodyweight squats so that we can translate that into weighted squats, whether it's front squats with our kettlebells or pistol squats. This is really the base that we want to start with. But letting the knees collapse inward is something that happens quite a bit. So one of the things I like is the Dan John potato sack squat drill, where you pretend like you've got a sack of potatoes in your hand. You can, incidentally, you can do this with a light kettlebell. It works very well. But we're going to do a couple of squats like this just to start off with the body weight. And I'll mention something too. If your low back or your back in general rounds, it's really not that big of a deal with body weight squats because we're not loading them. The ideal is that it shouldn't round in the long run, but for right now, it's okay if that happens. So don't worry too much. I just want you to get used to practicing the body weight squat. And I'm going to go ahead and look through your techniques and we'll just see how things are looking. Barack, that is a very good squat. Let's take a quick peek here. Alan, very nice. Mike, nice, Mike, very good. Awesome, Leroy. You've got basically the same stance that I do when I do squats, which means that you are doing a very good job. Kidding aside, by the way, your squats are going to look different depending on your build. I've got longish legs and very flexible ankles, so my squats are going to look a little different from a lot of others. As long as we are making sure that the knees track the toes, you should be good to go. So now what we've done is we've gotten a good couple of reps in with the body weight squat. What we want to do next, now I'll tell you this, it's very common for people to do, let's say, rocking exercises, like from original strength in between squats, and they work very well. We're just not going to do them for this one because I want to try a couple of other things, in particular, work on getting the hips a bit more engaged. Because I think for a lot of people, actually, the issue is engagement in the hips, because people will kind of drop into their squats and that sort of a thing. So what we're going to do for our drills to help prepare our squat, and this is just me, I'm showing you, you don't have to do the potato stack squat drill. If you're good at them, you can put the hands forward. You can put them over your head if you choose. Both of those are just fine. So what we're going to do is we're going to do what's called an elevated roll. And this is going to help work on the sides of the hips. I got this idea from Tim Anderson, who is the co-founder of Original Strength. He had a guy do this and really helped his squat a lot. And in fact, I tested this out on one of my own online students, a gentleman named Justin in Australia. And he said it was noticeably different in a very short period of time. So I want to test this out as well. So we're going to do the most basic variation of the elevated roll. Think about like the knee push-up position. Notice my elbows are straight. My hips are straight too, so I'm not piking at the hips. There's kind of like, if you look closely, it's just like a line between my knees and my shoulders, kind of going up at a bit of an angle. So that's kind of the position that you're going to want to be in. If you need to, I would definitely say pad your knees. That would be a good idea. And then what you're going to do is you're going to just look over one side, and then you're going to reach with that same leg. So you'll end up in that position here. I'll show you on the other side real quick. Look over, reach over just like that. And then you'll be in this kind of like side plank position. I'll show you one more time. Look over the shoulder. There you go, just like that. So you can take a quick peek at how that looks. And then one more on the other side. Do a couple like that, all right? So now before we begin, you can go ahead and begin if you'd like. I just want to make sure that I mention, just kind of internalize how your squats felt before. And then when we do these drills, similar to what we did with the push-ups, you're just going to try to notice a difference, all right? So you really want to reach with that back leg. I'll play the video again while you guys are doing this. You really want to reach with the leg. So the leg is kind of pulling you over into this position, just like so, okay? So we'll do like 2 or 3 on either side. I'm going to go ahead and take a look through as you guys are performing these. Okay, good. So remember, reach with the leg first and then let the arm follow. Reach with the leg. Yeah, there we go, David. Excellent. Good. And I would say look up at the ceiling as you're doing this too. It'll make it a little easier. What that does is going to make sure that you're not losing your balance. It's just going to make this movement easier. Because the idea behind these moves is that these should be easy, and because they are the base for the rest of your movement. And as bodyweight badass, as the course itself progresses, so will these movements. And you want them to be equally easy as you're progressing to more challenging variations. So we start off with the easiest one of all of them, all right? So now you've done that, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to another favorite, which is going to be the dead bug. Now I'm going to do a very regressed version of the dead bug here. I'm going to do it with my knees bent. If you want, you can do the full dead bug. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to have the knees bent, but I'm going to have the knees bent. I'm keeping my tailbone off the ground at all times, and I'm doing that by keeping one knee as close to my chest as I can possibly do it. Again, it will look different depending on the person. So if you have kind of tight hips, you might not get them as high as I did. But this would be the full dead bug right here. But the idea is that not only are we getting the front of the hips, the hip flexors more engaged, which is very important because in a squat, you're going to pull yourself down with your hip flexors, but you're also going to get your abs engaged. So we're going to go ahead and do a couple of these now. We're going to do some dead bugs, just maybe like 3 to 5 on either side. So Francois had his daughter join. That's awesome. So if you're doing these correctly, you should definitely feel the midsection firing up a bit. Looking good. If you're feeling it in the low back, definitely bend the knees more. That's just a good general rule. All right. Okay, now when you finish with that, what you're going to do is we're going to stand up and then shake it out a little bit, kind of relax. All right, and then we're going to go back and we're going to do another set of squats. You can do them potato sack squat style. You can do them with the hands in front, however you'd like. But I want you to internalize how it feels, and I want you to kind of internalize what, if any, difference you have felt in between the squats that you did originally and the squats that you are doing now. Do they feel easier? Do they feel deeper? Do they feel smoother? Matthias pointed out that his push-ups felt more explosive. Do your squats feel more explosive? Do you not feel anything? That is also a very real possibility. So these are the things that we want to look at, we want to keep in mind. So very good. Some good looking squats. So once you've done a good couple of these and you've kind of got a good metric, I'm going to call on somebody, either somebody who has volunteered or someone who gets Russian volunteered. I picked up the Russian volunteering joke from Pavel, by the way. So if you want to know where that comes from, it is from the man himself. So it must be good. All right. Anybody want to volunteer how they felt? We got this gentleman, Ailey, as I decided I'm going to call him.
Yeah, it's Ailey here.
Yes, excellent.
I think after those drills, I felt my brace a lot better. Like I felt more connected in my low back all the way through my spine.
Very nice.
It was just like a lot easier to find that. Also just like squatting, even bodyweight squatting without any warm up doesn't feel the best to me. So like the second round felt a lot smoother.
Awesome. Awesome. Very good. Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, that's not that uncommon. I remember for me, it's not that tough to, just do like a nice deep squat first thing in the morning. But I remember I had a colleague once, she's like, you can do that. I'm not saying this to brag. It was just, this was like my moment of realization that even though she was generally a good mover, she had a tough time with that too. I'm going to take a look through. Anybody else would like to contribute? Mike Lank, I'm going to ask you to go ahead. Or Mike L. I'm sorry if I wasn't supposed to say your last name.
No, it's fine. I usually just keep that on there for other stuff.
Sure.
I think for me, I felt connected from like my knees up through my sternum.
Nice.
More the second set. But I noticed that usually what helps me is like the original strength stuff around the ankles to get deeper. So my squat got easier, but it still was shallow.
Sure. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, because a lot of times people think, well, if my squat didn't get any deeper, it didn't really get any better. Well, Mike has made a good point, because, the ankles are really a huge point of difficulty for a great many people when it comes to their squat. So Mike knows to do some original strength stuff for his ankles to open those up in order to go deeper. But for for a smoother squat, these are still going to be very good. So Mike, I would say in a case like yours, the ankle stuff will be good for like warm up and cool down. And then you can toss this stuff in between sets of bodyweight squats. It's going to help make sure they're smoother in between. Elizabeth looks like she tentatively has her hand up. What would you like to contribute? I'm going to ask to unmute. Take your time.
Yes, there's a cue that I've always found quite hard to understand, which is imagining that your pelvis is split in two and you're squatting down between the two halves of your pelvis.
Yes,
and I definitely felt that much more. I felt as if I was coming down in between the two halves.
Fantastic.
Yes,
that is excellent.
That was very good. Definitely.
Awesome. I like hearing that. Very cool. And I think we're going to talk more about that, Elizabeth, in the Inner Circle Q&A, which is coming up in just like half an hour or two. So very awesome. All right. So what we're going to do next is we're going to be doing the lunge. All right. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. This is just squat from the side. Okay. So The lunge is another movement that unfortunately doesn't really get the kind of love that it deserves. I'm showing you from the front for a second because I want you to take a quick look at something that's important here. And I think this is an important distinction between lunges and squats. As we talked about earlier with the squat, you don't want the knee bending in. But if you look at the lunge, my knee's not really bending in, but my whole leg is actually shifted more toward my middle. All right. This is going to be really important in just a second. And this is for the standard lunge. There are other variations where you won't be doing this. But this is very, very important. All right. So just from the side so that you can see, I prefer that people go as deep as they can with control and obviously without bothering any of their joints. If this is the best you can do, it's perfectly fine for right now. Absolutely. But with time, the best thing would be for your lunge to progress to being quite deep like this, as best you can. It's going to go a long way toward building up your quads, your glutes, your heart and lungs are going to take a huge hit too. So you can, and by the way, if you've got rough knees, I would do the backward lunge like this. I would not step forward. It's just easier on people's knees in general. So I want to make sure that you know that you can either step forward or you can step back. All right. Now, one of the things that I noticed many years ago, people like to talk trash about the lunge and say, it's remedial. And if you can squat, you can lunge. I've found that to be not the case for a lot of people, and that people might be able to squat very well, but their lunge may not be very good. And again, a lot of it comes back down to just not spending much time on split stance work or single leg work. And then the other thing is that a lot of people don't really develop the other muscles around their hips. And so they're lacking some stability. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to be doing some rocking on the ground with a single leg. So I would highly recommend that you put a cushion on the ground. We're not going to do it just yet. We're going to get to it second, but I want to just show you. You do not want to put only one leg on the ground like that and then have to kind of like suffer through a knee that just is in a lot of pain. So seriously, if you've got a yoga mat, double, triple, quadruple it up to really cushion the knee. But we're going to get to that in just a moment. What we're going to do first is, because of how important it is for the hip to be able to rotate internally and then kind of what's called adduct or move more toward your midline, what we want to do is we want to actually practice that. So we're going to do hip switches like this, a very easy variation. You can make these very challenging, but I want to start very easy. And what you should be feeling as you're doing this is you should kind of start to feel like maybe around the groin area and around the inner thigh, like things are starting to kind of fire up, like the muscle in there is starting to fire up. So we're going to do this maybe 3 to 5 on either side. I'm just going to go through and take a look at your technique, make sure that things are looking hunky-dory, as we say in the Midwest. Very good. And as you're doing this, if you're not really feeling much in the thighs, just as you do that, lean forward slightly as you get to the bottom position, and you'll feel it a little more strongly. Very good. As you're doing this, you can nod your head or shake it depending on the answer, but you starting to feel the muscles on the inside of the leg or the inside of the thigh starting to fire up a bit. Feel free to nod your head yes, shake it no. Good. You know, one thing we didn't do at the beginning, actually, and this was kind of a mistake on my part, is we didn't test out the lunge. So why don't we do this? Let's stand up. We'll test out the lunge. This isn't going to be like, perfectly quote unquote scientific now because we've introduced this variable, but I want to test it out no matter what. So just do like 2 or 3 lunges, just kind of see how things feel. You can either go forward or backward depending on how your knees feel. If your knees are generally a little bit sensitive, I would go backward. Otherwise, go forward, go as deep as you can. And again, it's not going to be a perfect experiment in this case because we're doing one of the variable. We're doing the testing after having done the first variable, but that's okay. I think you'll still get a lot out of this. Very good. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back. We'll do just a few more of those hip rotations in and out like that. Say 2 or 3 on each side, nothing crazy. And then what we're going to do is going to be some single leg rocking. And as you're doing that, I'm just going to explain a little bit why I think a lunge is so important. And, most of the stuff that we do in our training is just done in place. So, we swing with our feet planted to the ground. We squat with our feet planted to the ground. Push-ups, just all done in one place. I really think that it's important, even if you don't have any particular sport that you practice, to have some sort of a bridge between your strength training and athletic movement. And lunges are very good for that because you're going from point A to point B. It's another reason, incidentally, why I like crawling, because it's not done just in one place. So there is also a nice conditioning component in moving from point A to point B when you're doing these. But all life happens basically one leg at a time. And incidentally, if you want to work toward pistol squats, these are very good as a prerequisite because they help you make sure that your control with one leg emphasized is better. It's not so easy to go from two legs to one, but going from like, a split stance to one leg is significantly easier. All right. So we've gotten this taken care of. What we're going to do next is we're going to work on the single leg rock. So what we're going to need is the cushion. And with the single leg rock, I'm going to show you this in just a minute. I'm going to just demonstrate this. You want to keep your eyes forward, rocking back on one leg. And notice too, that as I do this, I'm not letting my butt tuck under. So if you need to stop a little short so that you can maintain the natural curves of your spine, that's perfectly acceptable. Let me go back like so. All right. Now I'm going to show you from the front because I want you to see where your leg is going to be. And you're going to see the parallel between the lunge and the single leg rock. So you see it's right in the middle there. Now watch, I get into the bottom position of a lunge, bam, right in the middle. So you can see why this might be very, very helpful, all right? So we're just gonna do a few of these. Let's say 3 to 5 on either leg, or you can go up to 10 if you want. You're not likely to overdo it with these, but make sure that you are doing an equal amount on both sides. Keep your eyes forward, stay nice and relaxed. Good. And if you need to, you can put your hands a little further forward to make it easier to rock further forward too. I know that sometimes we'll put our hands a little too close to the knee and then you can't go nearly as far. Very good. Keep your heads up. Nicely done. All right. So make sure, again, you've done both sides. And then when you have done both sides, what we're going to do is we're going to test out lunge once more. Some of us are already doing it. Matt looks great. Test them out, see how they feel. Good. Elizabeth looking very athletic there. I like that. Very, very nice. All right. So we're just going to double check in with people. So those of you who noticed a difference, an improvement in your lunge, feel free to move your hand around so that I can see you. And then we'll just kind of tell me what you noticed that was different between the first lunge and this one. And granted, there may not be a huge difference because we already did one of the drills before you even tested, purely as a mistake. But I will be curious to hear what people have to say. So feel free to wave your hand semi-wildly, just enough that I know that you're not like scratching your face, but you're actually pointing out a difference. So Barack, it looks like you were waving your hand. I'm going to ask to unmute. So go ahead and unmute.
Yeah.
All right. Tell me, how did it feel?
Yeah, I felt it's more flowing. It's easier.
Excellent. Now, when you say easier, does it mean like it feels like you need less strength to do it? It just feels like you need less effort, or is it just smoother? Maybe a combination?
Yeah, smoother. Yeah, smoother and less strength and less effort. Yes.
Excellent.
And
Now, it's funny you would think, oh, less strength to do something like, well, how good can that be? But when we're talking about movements that should be done for higher reps, toward the end of your set is when you might ramp up the tension, for instance, when you might ramp up like the real push. And so when it's earlier on like that, it means that you can do fewer reps. So stuff like lunges, which I think are excellent for moderate and high rep sets, it's a very good thing to make them feel like you need less strength at the beginning in order to do them well. So excellent. Thank you, Barack. Anybody else want to contribute what they felt, any difference that they noticed, anything like that? Feel free to wave your hand. Alan, I'm going to go ahead and call on you. Go ahead and unmute. All right.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, I had already done lunges today as movement prep for my session earlier. So I was genuinely surprised at how much the first drill made a difference. When we did the is it the windshield wiper thing? I've forgotten what you called it.
Yeah, I just call them like hip switches. I don't have a good name for them. We'll call
Yeah,
them the Salkin hip switch. How about that?
Yeah, those hip switches made a genuine difference, even though I've already done lunges this morning. So I was quite surprised by how much of an impact they had compared to me earlier today.
That's awesome.
I know you couldn't test it against everyone else because we
Sure.
just went into it, but I've already done 55 lunges this morning.
Nice.
So I know that they weren't as easy then, and I was expecting them to be a bit of a, yeah, and I felt on the second round of them, even my ankle mobility had changed a little bit from the rocking.
It's impressive. And you know, the cool thing here is what we're seeing in real time is the value of making sure that you've got like other movement abilities that many of us kind of ignore that have an important role to play in these foundational movements. I think what a lot of people miss is that they're a little too focused on just exercise and they're not adding the movement element to it. And so that movement element, when added to exercise, is going to make the exercises better. And then it makes it easier for you to translate that into whether it's you know, playing pickup basketball with your kids, or whether it's lifting weights, or doing more advanced calisthenics work. All of the stuff has a really nice carryover into our what we want to do later. And this is why I think it's so important to make sure that you've got such a strong foundation with these basic calisthenics movements. And most people think, okay, well, you know, I'll just do some lunges. But like Alan had a great example. You know, he had done a bunch today, and then just the addition of these two different things that had an emphasis on the more primitive and more ancient abilities that we might, like, for example, rocking is like about as primitive as it gets, and it's something that we still do as a part of our developmental sequence as kids. And then just the ability to, you know, move the hips in a way that it doesn't look like it immediately has any sort of real use, but it goes a long way, even in a very, very short period of time. So that is excellent. Now, what we're going to do is, I see Matthias has his hand raised. Matthias, can we get to this later, or is this something that's relevant to the lunge? If it is, just let me know, and we'll definitely get to it right now. I gotta find you. Hang on a second. I'm gonna unmute you just to make sure, because I want to ask.
Oh, just my 5 cents. The SHS, the Salkin hip switch.
Yeah.
With the single leg rock definitely opened the hips and increased mobility. So for me, it felt like I could start scratching my earlobes with the kneecap just by going down. It was very effortless.
Nice.
And it feels like there was space to go, to say it this way. So it was
That's excellent.
Nice.
I love to hear that. I also like that you've already abbreviated the tongue-in-cheek name that I've given to this. The Salkin hips was SHS. Sounds better than SHIS, which would be the other name, I suppose, if we were to try to pronounce it. So awesome. Yeah, thank you very much for that contribution. That's really, really good. And that's precisely what we're looking at, is able to get more depth, greater ease. In the words of George and Ira Gershwin, who could ask for anything more? All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to work on the row. Now, here's one thing that I see a lot when people are doing rows, and you can probably you might be able to tell if you're looking at it, but not a lot of use at the back. People have a tendency to kind of let their shoulders sort of round forward in this hollow position, in the super strict hollow position. And what they end up doing is you're doing kind of like almost like bicep curls, just at a weird angle. So you can see this is really what's happening, and it's not all that helpful. Now, your biceps are certainly going to work when you're doing rows. So I don't want you to think they're not supposed to do anything, but what we really want to see is this. If you look closely, you'll see that my shoulder blades pull back right at the beginning, right as my elbows are starting to bend. So one of the ways that we're going to work on improving this is going to be kind of the reverse of the scapular push-ups we did earlier. What we're going to do is scapular rows. And so what it's going to look like, that's what a row should look like versus not, okay? But what the scapular row is going to look like, which we'll demonstrate in just a moment, is going to start kind of like that. So again, it's going to look similar to the push-up, not like that, obviously, but pull back. And it's something that doesn't happen. I want to make this very clear. It doesn't happen as a 1-2. So it's not, when you're actually doing the rows, it's not like shoulder blades back, then elbows bend. It should be all at the same time. But because many people have a hard time with that, again, what we're doing is we're isolating the movement of the shoulder blades first, and then we're going to kind of integrate it a little bit so that you can feel what the lats are supposed to feel like and how the shoulder blade is supposed to move with an original strength reset, which we'll do after. But I want to show you now what it's going to look like when we're doing the scapular row. Elbows stay straight the entire time. Oh, I'm not demonstrating that now. Just a second. Elbows stay straight the entire time. And it's a very mild movement back. So you'll notice it's basically just like I said earlier, it's like you're stretching the logo on the front of your shirt. Very, very small movement in the shoulder blades. It's just they're kind of pulling back just a little bit. If they only move like a centimeter, that's about all you need. So not over exaggerated. I'm not shrugging my shoulders up toward my ears. I don't remember if I don't think I demonstrated it poorly here, but if you were to see if my shoulders were to shrug toward my ears, you do not want that. You want it to be just a very light. You should feel in the upper back area. You should feel kind of just a contraction of the muscles around the shoulder blades. Again, elbows straight, and that is it. Okay. So now before we do this, we're going to demonstrate. We're going to do the rows. Okay. I wanted to give you the sneak preview. Okay. So we're going to do the rows. So I want you to, if you have the ability, we're going to practice a couple of bodyweight rows. Let's say 4 or 5 of them. Just kind of get a feel for them. Very good. And then obviously, you know, if you don't have the ability to do bodyweight rows right now, just kind of take some notes. I see Elizabeth is doing them, looking good. Barack appears to be doing them, very good. Matt, excellent. Mike, very nice. Francois, excellent. All right. So once you've done that, what we're going to do next, and by the way, even if you don't have any rings or TRX to do the rows with, you can still practice just having your hands out in front and then just kind of pulling the shoulder blades back. Again, it's a very mild movement, but you are more than welcome to practice that. But otherwise, if you've got the rings or the TRX, we're going to do the scapular row for, let's say, 5 or so reps. Keep your elbows straight. That's very important. Keep the elbows straight and just a couple of little movements with shoulder blades. See a couple more reps from everybody. Very good. Most excellent. All right. So once you've done that, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to toss in it's going to seem like a wild card of an original strength reset, but this is going to go a long way in helping you to fire up the lats, the entire upper back. This is going to be you'll probably run out of breath just trying to say it, but this is the prone upper body partial segmental roll. I already need like a glass of water. I'm like pooped just saying all of that. But what it's going to look like is this. Laying on the ground, lift the head, look over your shoulder, and you're going to reach. You're only going to go halfway, but look very closely. That should look like the top position of a row, correct? So when you see that, you're seeing the elbow is bending, you're seeing the shoulder blade is pulling back, right? So you're really going to feel all the muscles surrounding the shoulder blade as well as the lat firing up naturally. So you're not trying to get them to fire up. It should fire up what's called reflexively. Okay, we're going to do this a couple of times on both sides. And let's say 2 to 3 times on either side. You're just going to go part of the way. Once you kind of start to feel the contraction in the upper back, we're going to call it good. We'll relax. All right, so 2 to 3 times on either side. And then once you've done that, you're going to go back to your rows. So I'm going to go ahead and take a look real quick at your good, and keep the elbow bent. So I want you to think at the top or when you're reaching that it's going to be kind of like the top position of a row. So it's just like your elbow is, there we go, Alan, very nice. Matthias, looking good. Let's see here. Joel already did these last week, so he's probably pretty used to them. Francois, looking good. Lior, excellent. Ailey, new name. His name is actually Eli, but because I mispronounced it as Eli, I've said, well, now I'm just going to have to go way crazy and call him Ailey now. So that if anybody who didn't show up early, that's the inside joke. So it's Eli, if I recall correctly, is how he pronounces his name. Okay, good. He gave me the thumbs up, so I didn't mess it up this time. Good. So now that you've done that, what we're going to do is, as you might guess, I'm going to drop my phone here, but we're going to put this back in position. And we're going to apply the same sensation to the rows. So it's going to be, you're going to just one smooth motion. You're going to pull the shoulder blades back and you're going to pull yourself forward. All right. Nice big chest as you're doing it. We're going to have a good old time. So let's take a look through, see how everyone's doing. Looking good, Mike. Eli, very nicely done. Good. Lior is doing the, I like to call it tracing when you do it like without any actual implements. This is a really good thing to do before any movement, actually. Just kind of do it, ape the movement without actually doing the movement. It goes a long way in making it feel a lot easier. So good. We've got, looks like everybody has just about finished up. Now I would be very interested to hear some feedback on what people noticed. And I'm going to go ahead and let people wave their hand in front of the screen if they would like to. And you may need to do it for a good couple of seconds because I'm going to be scrolling through here. I would like to hear how you felt. David, were you raising your hand or just adjusting the camera? Just adjusting, okay. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Let's take a look here. Matt, is your hand up? All right, go ahead and unmute there. And tell me what you felt.
Yeah, so someone else I think earlier mentioned a little tweak they were dealing with. I think it was Joel. I too am doing the gains giving expansion pack right now.
Yeah.
And I on those clean and jerks kind of tweaked my traps last Wednesday, and it's still, you know, having some residual pain in my neck. And I noticed on my first set of rows I was using a little too much of the shrug and the traps there, but activating the lats with the original strength exercise there really enabled me to utilize the lats and the scap muscles to more efficiently row and get the range of movement in my neck without any pain.
Good. And is your neck feeling better now as well? After the
Yeah,
road?
I mean, I've done some pretty aggressive treatment on it. I went a little too, I jumped the gun a little bit with the jump sizes in the kettlebell between week 1 and week 2, and I got a little overzealous, but I'm good. Yeah.
Good. Well, this is a complete side note. Since you're doing gains giving, I can tell you for sure. Number one, definitely some trap stretches before and after will be good. But I would also say toss in some YTWLs and shoulder external rotations. That's going to help make sure that, because you might very well find that if you do a lot of overhead work or you do a lot of, very linear stuff, shoulder external rotations are awesome for the rotator cuff muscles. You're doing a lot of internal rotation with the hand overhead. So that will take care of that. And then the YTWLs are going to help make sure that your lower and middle traps can adequately pull your shoulder blades down and back. And so you're not going to be doing inadvertently doing as much shrugging when you're doing stuff like the rows, because with anything overhead, there's going to be a lot of use of the upper trap, just to kind of keep the weight in place. So try that out too. Toss that into your warm up, maybe, or in between sets on gains giving. I think you might find that helpful.
Cool. Thank you.
My pleasure. My pleasure. So let's go through and let's see what other insights others had to say. Anybody who would like to raise their hand and let me know, I'd be very happy to call on you. If not, I will call on you anyway. So you might want to prepare yourself. Actually, Francois, I haven't heard from you. I'd be very curious. Francois, if you don't know, he did my Power Up Your Pull-Up program. He did all 3 of the stages. I have a beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And he took his pull-ups from like 4 to I think like 12 in like 3 months. And he's a big dude, as you can see. He's like he could fight in UFC, and I'm sure even Francis Ngannou would be terrified of him. But he's too kind, and he would not punch anybody in the face.
I'm a gentle giant.
Correct. How did the rows feel?
I used to be the one who do the rows in 2 times, just like the first, second.
Yeah.
And now it's more of a one and only move.
Excellent. And did you notice a difference when you made that switch?
I can feel more the lats, like
nice.
So usually I need to do chin up or pull up to feel the lats.
Right. Yeah.
Feel the lats by doing rows.
Excellent. Yeah, this will help you out a lot because rows, believe it or not, are a very good way to build up your lats. I read something recently by one of my favorite strength bloggers named Jamie Lewis. I reread one of his older articles on pull-ups, and he talked about for a long time he was only doing rows. And then just one day he decided he could already do quite a few pull-ups, but he hadn't really practiced them in something like a year. And so he decided after doing all these rows, he was just going to test out some pull-ups. And I think he said he knocked out like 30. So if you know how to do rows properly, like I was mentioning, you want your shoulder blades and elbows to move back in one smooth motion, but you want to make sure they're both moving. This is a great way to do it. So, all right, we're getting toward the tail end of this very fun session. Is there anything anybody else would like to ask or throw in real quick, or any comments about the rows, anything like that? Even if you've spoken, you can speak again. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to go through the participants list here. Take a look, see if anybody has anything they would like to. Elizabeth is unmuted. What would you like to toss in?
I'd like to try doing get-ups after that, because it felt similar in that you were doing a roll and a pull at the same time. And
Yeah.
the get-up, I think it would really help for that, wouldn't it?
I think so. I'm going to stop the share, by the way. I just realized everybody was just staring at me like mid-row for forever. No, I think that would be a fantastic way to do it. In fact, I'm a big fan of rolling plus get-ups, because a get-up is a roll. And so the better you are at rolling in general, the easier the get-ups are going to be as a general rule. So very good. All right. We're right at the tail end. We've only got about like 2 minutes, and then I've got to get on the Inner Circle Q&A, which Elizabeth, I'm sure, will be there for. Any final questions, comments? Eli, pardon me, said he has to run. Thank you very much for being here. I'm going to take a quick look through the participants list, see what we got. All right. Well, thank you very much for joining me today. I am very happy that we was able to do this with you guys and spend the Sunday with you. Feel free to follow up with me via email. Let me know how your training has been going after doing some of these things and after you start to apply it as well. And then incidentally, if you want a little help, like, Elizabeth just talked about doing the rolls along with the get-ups and stuff like that. If you want a little help or some insights on how you might apply some of these things to your training, either as part of a warm-up, back off sets, other things like that, or how to apply it to different movements, such as with kettlebells, be happy to set up a call with you. We could do like a half-hour or 1 hour consultation. If you're interested, no obligation, obviously. If you're interested, you can just feel free to reach out and ask. But if you are interested, alex@alexsalkin.com, and I'll be very happy to get back to you as soon as I possibly can. So thank you, everybody, for being here today. The recording will go out probably in a day or two, and you can review it as much as you'd like, as little as you'd like. But please do keep in touch with me. I'd be very curious to hear how things go for you with your training after this, and keep your eyes open for Bodyweight Badass. It will be out before you know it. Thank you again, everybody. And as always, have fun and happy training.